In part 2 of this video series with Adam Apollo, one of the most brilliant minds on the planet, and guest co-host Laura Stadler, we learn how to create a ball of energy and infuse it with an earth element. Perfect. Okay, so shall we talk about the exercise that you had us do
Sure. Yes,
involving
please.
creating an energy ball? Okay.
Yeah. Well, do you guys want to describe your experience of it, or would you like me to introduce the exercise first?
Go ahead and introduce the exercise, and then we would love to describe our experience of it.
Okay, great. Yeah. So for this practice, what we do is it's really a practice of learning energetic sensitivity on one side, and the other half is learning the actual act of the way that our consciousness shapes the field outside of us and getting to know how we are actually creating the world around us. And so with this practice, you're instead of just doing threads of energy, you're actually doing an entire ball of energy inside of your hands. And what I have students do is put their hands together, focus on that little space in the center of the palm where your palms are in contact, visualize that that space is being filled by a ball of energy, but they're choosing before they do this which element that energy is going to be. And I suggest in this practice, for simplicity purposes mostly, but also because there are very fundamental energetics to each of these, that you choose one of the four elements, meaning they choose fire, air, earth, or water. Now, why fire, air, earth, and water? Well, for one thing, they represent the states of matter. So we know that all states of matter are either solids, liquids, gases, or plasmas. And so these states of matter are actually the most fundamental ways that we experience and relate to the physical world. And because the physical world is what we're always in interaction with, it's actually the thing that we kind of trust the most, we rely on the most in order to have a sense of what's real and what's true and what's validatable. And so we innately already have a lot of experience in us about what fire is, or what, earth is, or solid things, or what air is, gaseous stuff, or water and how water flows. And we all drink water all the time. We're mostly made of water. So it's a fairly easy conceptual exercise for people to take on. And then it gets really, really cool and fascinating what happens when you actually create one of these balls of energy. And I have the students do this, make a ball of energy of a specific element, and then hand it to a partner. And when it's passed to the partner receives it, and they have no idea what it was that the person just created. They did it all quietly in their own minds, in their own focus. And when the receiver receives it, their job is to attempt to describe, what does it feel like? How is it heavy? Is it light? Is it hot? Is it cold? What does it feel like? Rather than guessing what the answer is, by tuning into the texture and the dynamics of the field, now they're actually giving feedback to the person that created the field. But they're also, having this beautiful intuitive energy sensing experience. And I find that, in most classes, about 90% of people in the room actually get it completely right the first time and every time, because energy is tactile. It's not an illusion. It's not just in your head, and it's not just a projection. There is actually standing fields of force that our consciousness generates around us, in our bodies, and by the way, anywhere that we choose to focus. And this is what the ancients called magic, the ability to be in communication with the universe. So yeah, tell me about your experiences.
Okay. Laura went first. She created the first energy ball. So I'm going to have Laura explain what she experienced.
Yeah, and actually, before I do that, I want to share a really quick story because
Okay.
I did a 10-day silent Vipassana course, and basically the main exercise for 4 days of meditating was to focus on the area just above the upper lip and the air coming out of the nostrils, and that was the point of focus for 4 days. And I don't know if it was the second or third day, I started to notice some tingling on my upper lip. And I asked the teacher, I kind of, panicked a little bit. And I was like, is this going to go away? Am I, creating some kind of problem, here and they're like, no, you're fine. It'll go away. You're fine. So yeah. And also, just in terms of yoga, the practice of single pointed focus, retreats where you like look at a flame and you just focus on that flame.
Yeah.
So anyway, so when we did the exercise, I initially, so I have a little bit of like self-doubt things happening when I, kind of make decisions. And when I was deciding which element to choose, I thought about my own element, being an Aries, fire. So I was, kind of leaning towards that. But then I thought about it and I'm like, maybe I do something kind of opposite to fire. That is like my nature is to be fiery, and so so maybe I choose a different element based
Yeah.
on that. So I chose air.
Mm.
So I focused my attention, infused it with this feeling of just pure light air, just purity, and the word pure came to mind, and just this really clean, pure sense of just pure air. And then I handed it to Cindy, and she guessed it right away. She said, "This is air," and then she said, "And it feels very pure."
Mm.
So she even used the word pure and purity, and I was just,
Mhm.
blown away by that. So, and then the other part was when Cindy, and I'll let you talk about, kind of how you created yours, Cindy. But when you presented yours to me, I had the same, kind of self-doubt. And I guessed yours, I think was yours Earth, if I recall correctly. Not, no, okay. But anyway, but I that was what came to me first, but then
Yeah.
I, put it to, and then I guessed something else and it was wrong. And then she told me, I was like, that was my first instinct. So
Mm.
again, it was just like this pattern was just like so right alive in front of me, through this exercise. So that was also really beautiful to see my
Mm.
tendency and how that, manifested through the exercise. So.
Mm.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was really interesting.
Mm.
Um, I Her intention was received exactly as it was intended. It was like,
Mm.
oh, this is air. And how did I get that? I don't know. It was just,
It's
I
just
just
obvious.
knew it was air.
Yeah.
And what was interesting, I am also a fire sign,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and I infused mine with fire.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
Laura said that her first impression was fire. She also said that one of the things she's working on is not second guessing herself. So she guessed earth first, and then she guessed water, and then she guessed air. And then I said, well, this is fire. And she said, that was what came to me first.
Right. Yeah. And it's fascinating because we often, we sometimes get an immediate impression, but
Hmm.
we're cautious not to project
Hmm.
something that's ours onto something else. Like we're
Hmm.
supposed to be receiving. And it's fascinating for you, Laura, because as a fire sign, you wanted to create fire, but then you pulled back from that and you're like, nope, I'm going to create air instead. You focused in on that, you made that experience, and you shared that with Cindy. But your natural inclination was fire right from the beginning, to not only create it, but then also when you were handed it, it was also what you felt when you received. And so there's a clear, binary pattern to you resisting your own fire in a sense in that dynamic, not wanting to project your own fire onto things. And you can see a lot of things in that. And it goes way, way deeper. I've done, hundreds of these kinds of classes, and I've seen groups of people go through almost the exact same kinds of things in almost every class, where one person they'll know exactly what it was, but then they second guess or doubt it. And it's often the thing they also were trying to create. I see that a lot. And other times, you'll have someone creating a field of energy and they're not exactly sure what they wanted. Like they start with earth, but then they're like, no, I want to do water. And they hand it to the other person. The other person's like, well, it's really heavy, but it's also dripping through my fingers. It feels like it's kind of like mud. Like what's, like they'll actually get the dynamics of the mixture of the elements that the person created because they weren't clear about exactly what they were trying to do with their own minds. And then we also have people who, there's a lot to kind of listening within versus the sensitivity aspects. And so someone will feel the qualities of something that's actually fire. Like they'll be like, wow, it's really tingly and it's really hot and all of these things. But am I making an assumption or am I an illusion? Am I making that up? And what if I get it wrong? And so then they just try to guess something else rather than describe the experience of what the energy actually feels like. And that's another way that people kind of can go off track. But surprisingly, even with these different ways we can go off track, what I find is that still, 90% of the room, and you guys can attest to this because you were in there. I mean, almost everybody in the room, except for a couple situations, got it absolutely right. And they were shocked that they'd all got it right. I mean, there was a guy who was like, I couldn't even believe that I knew what it was.
Mhm.
That seems crazy. How could I feel something you can't see? Like he's like, what is this stuff? And it is because, we're just literally not onboarded to something that's one of the most fundamental organs of our experience and sensory experience in the world. We're not given that onboarding growing up in this world, unless you've got, metaphysical, spiritual parents, or, you had friends that you had that with, or you happen to get lucky and kind of go through your own, as they would say, awakening process and start to study and look at this stuff for yourself.
That's amazing. Laura, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I just came to me right now in terms of you choosing fire, that maybe, I don't know if somehow me rejecting that, kind of that it went to you or something like that. That was the only thought I had. It's just, that I had been playing with the idea of fire and changed my, you know, pivoted to air. And I don't know if that somehow got to you. It was just a thought, just in terms of kind of how we pick up things from one another and how that we don't know where it comes from and, how we're influenced in that way.
That is very possible. But as a fire sign, I went directly to fire. I'm making fire. But I obviously picked up very clearly your intention and the fact that it was air. And not only was it air, it was very pure. So both are possible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's fascinating that you're both, I mean, I'm just pointing out that you're both fire signs.
mhm,
You both first had the impulse to do fire as well.
right.
And that's just an interesting on its own and a
Mhm,
synchronicity to this. Um, and yeah, as we said,
Mhm.
you can reveal deeper and deeper layers through
mhm,
these kinds of practices, especially if you go beyond just the elements as well and go into other kinds of things.
mhm. So, would it be safe to say this is absolutely something you could practice at home?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Putting
it's very easy to do, and it's really fun actually to get a
right.
partner to
Mhm,
to do this work. And I would just say, some of the key principles here are when your muscles are tense, you're restricting the flow of charge. So if you're all uptight like this, and you're flexing everything, you will not feel very well in your hands, and you won't let much energy through. So the principles of Tai Chi and Qigong especially show us drop the shoulders, open the chest, open the arm, open the wrists, open the elbows, everything, soften and relax as much as you can, almost as if, if you just let go, everything will just fall, but you're just barely holding it up. And from there, you have a lot more sensitivity and greater energy flow. And this is true in martial arts. When you relax your body, you have a lot more impact, a lot more force. And so you start with the fingertips so that you can get a feel for what that feels like, starting together, slowly separating them. And then when you do the full palm, just press your hands all the way together. And one of the ways I like to help people with this experience is the feeling of actually relaxing your hands to let it open rather than pulling. So you're just relaxing and letting the fact that as you relax, you automatically separate your hands and they come into a ball. And so this reminds the body that it's an energetic flow, and you're just literally allowing the energy to flow out of you into that ball space. And as you do that relaxation, you're just going to focus on the visualization of seeing the element growing inside of that space until you have that field. Have the other person put their hands out like they're going to catch a ball. You put it in their hands, they receive it, you take your hands away, can touch the ground or brush your hands off on your legs, and they hold it, and then they kind of feel it and describe what that thing feels like. That's the essential nature of the practice.
Okay, so do try this at home.
Yes, please try it at home. It's very fun.
If you don't already have your copy of Adam's Gift, get your copy today at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, or ArchwayPublications.com.